the theme of today's talk is the spirit of Christmas. And you all are spiritual people here, so you know that Christmas is about more than the birth of Christ. And actually the origins of Christmas predate the birth of Christ. And what we're talking about when we say Christmas spirit is that feeling of eternal love, compassion, kindness that tends to manifest this time of year, which is something that's in every single religion. Don't you agree?
I do.
Agree, Claire. And we hope that we can give you a bit of that spirit of Christmas tonight. The theme of the talk also is past, present and future, which recalls that famous Charles Dickens story, Ebenezer Scrooge. And we're going to take you on a journey to the past, into the present and then into your future, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, the Christmas Carol was written in 1843. Watkins built around 1883, I think, if I'm correct. And that era was the height of spiritualism, when visiting mediums was all the rage. I mean, that's what people would do in the evenings. They would go and talk to dead people. It was just something you did. Of course, now we don't, but there are still some people around who do that, and that's why I'm very, very blessed to be with this amazing lady who I've called the honest medium, and anyone who's known her will know that that's exactly true. She's been practicing mediumship and giving wonderful, loving advice to people grieving and people going through difficult times in their lives for many years, and the testaments to her excellence and the comfort that she can give, you can just go online and see it. And she's now also a budding author. Well, not a budding author, she co-authored a book with me, which I'm super proud of, called Answers from Heaven, which was published by Piatkus, and has been #1 in its category on Amazon almost since the week of publication, selling so well. And in that we talk about the science of mediumship, and I feel very blessed that I was in a position to say, well, all my books I talk about communicating with dead people, and I give anecdotal stories, my own experiences, but I'm not a practitioner. And I've never in my books before given a big platform to a practitioner, because I haven't actually found one that I could really believe in. And I did with Claire, and the part of the book that she wrote was truly moving, and the number of letters we've had about it has been so comforting, inspiring. Anyway, I'm going to give you a massive ego at this rate, so over to you, Claire.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you. Thank you for coming. This lady really needs no introduction, because I'm sure you've all seen a Theresa Cheung book.
Too many of them.
No, you can never have too many. So Theresa is a prolific author, and she obviously knows her stuff about the paranormal and the afterlife and angels, and it just seemed like a wonderful match, and I felt truly blessed to have been asked to come and work with Theresa, because Theresa, as the researcher and as the academic, giving me a platform like this and us coming together is a special thing. So I want to thank Theresa personally, but I can't say enough about this lady's own work, her integrity and her honesty, which is so important in this field. So I just want to say thank you, Theresa, and hope that's a nice introduction.
Enough of that, we can go back to being horrible to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, let's get into the talk. Are you ready for that, Claire?
I am.
Okay. Christmas past. Okay, this is where I'm going to talk a bit about the Christmas past, and then we're going to hand over to the medium where Claire's going to talk about it. But first of all, let me talk about the past, your past. And most of us, when we think of our past, we go right back to childhood. And I'd like you, if you could, as I'm talking about the past, and then Claire does, and then we move to present and future, to just imagine yourself as a 7 or 8-year-old child. Go back in time and see in your mind's eye, feel in your heart the child that you were. And there's a reason for all this, because and that will come clear as the talk goes on. Go back in time now in your mind and see yourself. Now, not all of us have had happy childhoods. I'm aware of that. And some of us, going back in time, may be quite painful. And if that's the case, I'd like you to just hug that child in spirit right now. But still go back. Bring that child here into this room with you right now, and there is a reason for that. About 10 years ago, I wrote a book which did quite well for HarperCollins called Angel Babies, where I talked about the child within us, and also talked about children who'd had angelic or heavenly encounters, and why that is, because children tend to be so closer to spirit because they have this ability to suspend disbelief, to accept and to trust, which we tend to lose as we get older. As we get older, we tend to get more cynical. However, the spiritual among us, one of the things that defines them, and I found that they don't have that cynicism. They're somehow able to still tap into that childlike spontaneity, love and joy, which I'd like to try and bring forward tonight with us, all here together. And the reason I'd like to bring that child that's in all of us here tonight, because that is where I firmly believe heaven first tries to speak to us. Sometimes it's very hard for heaven to get to that child because disappointments, heartbreak, challenge, the toughness and ugliness of life sometimes shuts that child away, and we shove it away. And that sometimes heaven is really trying to speak to us through dreams, through angel signs. And because we're so kind of put this protective barrier around that child, it can't break through. But that is the first place where heaven will speak to you. And that's what I'd like you to try and reconnect with now, the child within you. And on that beautiful note, I'm going to hand over to Claire.
And there is a really good reason why we should not forget how to access our inner child. Many of us, in life's challenges and in the difficulties through life, often feel that we're on our own. And what Theresa and I, both our work is about, is re-emphasising and reinforcing to you that you're never on your own. When I was 4, as a child, I heard and felt my grandfather come close to me. He had been passed about a year, and at the age of 4 I had no awareness of death and dying, no need to feel comforted knowing that I'm going to die one day. There was no thoughts in that way at all. I was standing in Richmond Cemetery, I was playing with stones and a vase, completely distracted in that childlike, playful way, and I felt my grandfather come round me, and I just knew it was him. Now the interesting thing about this was he was saying to me, Claire, tell Nanny, Grandad says I love you, Ive. And I was so busy playing, I just dismissed it and said, no, I'm busy. I didn't have any care or thought to even worry that my nan would quite like to hear that. My mum's sitting in the audience. She can verify and back this story up for us, because my mother was there and she was as gobsmacked, is the word I use, as my nan, because the reason it was quite surprising, other than the fact that a 4-year-old is saying this kind of thing, is that my nan went by the name of Connie, and I knew her by Nanny. My mum called her Nan. My granddad called her Ive. And she didn't like the name Ivy because it reminded her of poison ivy, so everybody else called her Connie. So the fact that I said, Nanny, Grandad says, tell Nanny I love you, Ive, really struck a chord. Now the beauty of it is that as a child, our brain waves literally exist in a different frequency called theta. That's the brain state that we're in when we're daydreaming, when we're asleep as adults. Children are in that state all the time. So in my play and in my unskeptical, questioning mind of just being in the present, I was able to perceive my grandfather and receive and pass on a message of love that stayed with us for years. My nan died at the age of 92. She was 30 odd years without my granddad, and that message brought her peace and healing. So Theresa and I are trying to get you back into your inner child so that you can rekindle that feeling and connection to spirit where Theresa says heaven is, because then you can feel that embrace and not feel alone and know that you're comforted. So I hand back over to Theresa.
Okay, inner child again. Another thing about children is their insatiable curiosity. And in all the research I've done, all the many years I've been writing about the paranormal, I've come to the conclusion that the defining characteristic of a person who's living a spiritual life is curiosity. Never say that you know for sure. There's always potential for more and more growth, and that's what's so wonderful about a child. Not only their ability to be endlessly absorbed in the present moment, which we'll be moving on to now, but their insatiable curiosity. Never lose that, people. Never lose that. Because when you lose that, that's when you start leading a less spiritual life. And that's why even if you make mistakes and life isn't going right and you feel like you've failed or you've not been living to your full potential, if you are learning from all that, you are growing. And that is the definition of a spiritual life, is to keep on growing. So don't get despondent if you get setbacks and disappointments and you don't feel you're doing enough yet. Just keep having that curious spirit, and you will keep evolving in spirit. Because I believe on the other side, and I'm sure Clara will agree, that once we pass over, that learning continues. It's never ending. That is the definition of spirituality, in my opinion, being curious and a willingness to learn. But let's go right back to the present now and keep that child here, that child wanting to learn and grow and absorbed in the present moment. And I'm now going to link it in with some of the other research I've done on near-death experiences. Now, I've studied hundreds, probably thousands now, of stories to collate in my books for Schuster and Harper and all the places that I've written. And one of the constant themes in there is the life review. That when somebody is on the brink of death and crosses over to the other side and has this amazing near-death experience, one of the things that is fairly common is a life review. And I'd like you all to ask you all now, is the life that you're currently leading one that you would like to see again? Because you're going to see it again. I'm not trying to be scary here or anything. If it isn't, if you're going to be looking at it in spirit and going, oh, God, no. Time for a wake-up call. Time for a change. And I'm not trying to scare you all here because, well, I am in a way, because we don't know what day will be our last. I'm sure we've all known people in our lives that we hear unexpectedly, an accident, sudden illness, a loss. None of these people knew when they woke up that morning that it was going to be their last time here on earth. We just simply don't know. Every single day is a miracle. And that's the beauty of the present. It is all we have. Live the present with a spirit of curiosity and love, and that Christmas spirit that Claire and I are trying to talk about here. And you will be living a life of true meaning. And when we're thinking about the present, one way to do that is to bring sacredness into your actions. A lot of emphasis in the New Age movement, personal transformation movement, on thoughts, visualizations, affirmations. And I've been there, done all that. I've studied everything. But what I found a couple of years ago was actually I wasn't living as a fulfilling life as possible, despite my hours of meditation and yoga and affirmations. And I started to put the focus on actions, to ritualize them. And I've written a book for Watkins called 21 Rituals to Change Your Life, which has now gone into 14 languages, because it struck a chord. Because what I was saying in there is, let's take the emphasis off positive thinking and start positive doing. And it's all backed up by research, actually. I find there's a lot of scientific research that says that our actions actually impact our mood and our thoughts more than our thoughts impact our actions. So that's something to think about. I think books like The Secret are wonderful, The Power of Intention and all that, but let's face it, how often has that really worked for you? That you've had massively positive thoughts and it's still not happened? And maybe the reason is that your actions are not in line with your thoughts. I think that the universe is waiting for us all to do something positive rather than think or say it. Because once we do something positive, just as if when you meet people who promise a lot, speak a lot, but they don't actually do it, you don't trust them in the end. And maybe that's the universe for us too. There's too much emphasis on all in the head, but let's just do some more positive actions. And that's what my message is about, making the present moment sacred. And every action you do, even something as simple as making your bed first thing in the morning, can be incredibly powerful. Because what you do there, you accomplish a task, you set the tone for the rest of the day. You have an ordered, calm environment. It sets you in that right mindset. And there is scientific research based on that. Simple positive acts like making your bed in the morning, can really transform your life and make you have a more fulfilling life than standing in front of a mirror and going, I love you all the time, and all that. So that's my message about the present moment and bringing the spirit of Christmas in it. That to make every moment a sacred now, not just in our mind, but with our actions, what we do. And here's a doer, here's a lady, here's a doer.
It's very true, because the present moment is all we ever have. And many people who come and see me in my line of work often find it quite hard, actually, if you're talking about grief and moving on, where they have lost a loved one, to feel that they can embrace this moment, to feel that they can move into their next moment and leave the loved one behind them, for fear that they're dishonouring their loved one's memory. But what they don't realise is your loved ones are here with you right now, here in this present moment. And many of us, we feel when we lose a loved one that our loved one is no longer able to participate in life with us here now. We like to think they're with us. It would be nice and comforting to know that. Much of my work is to try and give the evidence for you to understand that they are here now. But they very much still play a part in our lives. Theresa and I, we like that saying, don't we, that death ends a life, not a relationship. Yeah. And I want to share very briefly with you one of the ways in which I know your loved ones, who you perhaps particularly at this time of year, let's face it, at Christmas we feel that void because we get together and we notice there's someone missing. I want to share briefly a story that allowed me, and there are many in my life, I'm blessed, but a story that allowed me to absolutely know they don't miss anything, that you're not dishonouring them by moving forward, because they can enjoy your successes. The other day I was giving a message to a lovely lady. Her name is Susie. She's given me permission to share this message with you. Susie had not had a message before in an audience setting like this. And I didn't know anything about Susie's life. Susie had come strangely via my sister, so I'm owning that openly. But I didn't know anything about Susie. And Susie's dad has passed into the spirit world. And I was able to give his name and say I had a father here, and I gave the name out and nobody else could take it. So, of course, naturally at first I'm thinking, should I really be going to Susie because she's come with my sister? And then I realised I have to honour spirit. Her dad has something to say, and I didn't know anything. So the wonderful thing about this is after her dad had given her very specific details, even down to what was on the death certificate of how he passed, may I say, which is quite unusual, but he was absolutely adamant he was coming in. And Susie could recognise beyond doubt that was her dad. He then did something that was so beautiful, in my mind anyway, that it will stay with me forever. He was cheeky. You see, in spirit we don't lose our personality, okay? He came in with a cheekiness. And I don't want to look spooky here, but he literally charaded an image at me where he went, shh, which sounds a bit spooky, but to me I know that's my symbolism. He's got a secret. And he allowed me to know, I've got a secret I want to share. I want to blow the lid off of something here. He was so excited, he wanted to dance. And I said to Susie, I said out loud, I can't say that. We're in an audience setting. It's Susie's secret. But she allowed me to continue. She said, please say, please say. And her dad told me that Susie had just got engaged, and that she had been upset at the thought that her dad wouldn't be here to walk up the aisle with her, and that he was trying to let me know that he would be walking up the aisle with her. He was congratulating her on her engagement, telling me how much he thought the world of her chosen partner. He named her partner. And then he floored me again, because he gave me Amsterdam. And when I asked Susie what that meant, I felt she'd gone. I thought perhaps she'd gone with her partner to Amsterdam. She was in tears because she told me it was a secret. She hadn't told anyone she was getting married. Her and her partner had sat on it until she'd gone to Amsterdam to see her mum, to break the news to her mum, because obviously it was still raw in the grief of her father dying, and he had been in Amsterdam and had known that that had happened. Now for me, that was proof beyond all doubt, because I was giving something that nobody knew. I couldn't research. It was secret. She hadn't shared it. And for Susie, she now has written the most beautiful words to me, telling me how she will now go on and enjoy her wedding and embrace life, knowing her dad's still there.
Ah, I can't follow that. That's beautiful.
Oh, you can.
That's so beautiful. I've lost my train of thought now. Anyway, my challenge now is to take you all into the future. And again, I'd like you to keep that child with you, because that will all become apparent in a minute. Just keep that picture of a child, but sort of imagine yourself in the future, how you see yourself, say 10, 20 years. I'd like you to try and picture that. And I hope it's the picture you have is one that's really happy and fulfilling. And the reason I'm talking about the future is because this year I've had an amazing ride, really, that I've been working with neuroscientists who are studying time, the possibility of time travel, the human ability to sense and see the future. And what I've learnt has really blown my mind, and it's in a book that I co-authored with Dr. Julia Mossbridge, who is known as the precognition lady, called The Premonition Code. Again, rather like the co-author thing I did with Claire, it was quite hard because Dr. Julia Mossbridge is the practitioner studying the science of the future, whereas Claire living mediumship. So my role again was to be the kind of like, well, this is interesting, how can I present it to a larger audience? And I don't understand this, Dr. Julia, please explain, that kind of thing, similar to what I did with Claire in Answers from Heaven. But what I got from it is that scientists are so close to where we are in spiritual thinking at the moment. They haven't a clue what time is and how it functions. There are experiments which show that the future can somehow affect the past, which this idea of causal loops and everything, it's mind-blowing. And if you want to have your mind really stretched, do read the Premonition Code, because we try and explain right now where science is in studying the possibility of looking into the future and all the studies and research going in. And what is time? Time is not what you think it is. We all think of it as linear, but as I think it was Einstein said, the only reason we do that is because if we knew everything, how time really worked, it would just be too much. What I found very much is, I can try and use a metaphor. If you throw a stone into a pond, there are ripples going out, or whatever, and that stone is like the present moment, and those ripples all go out past, future, all at the same time. Very much the thinking is that everything's happening at once, that your future has already happened, your past has already happened, everything is known, and what the common theme here is your spirit. That spirit in that little child I asked you to visualize, the spirit that's within you now, the spirit that will be there in the future, that spirit is constant through every age and stage in your life. That spirit is eternal. Think about it. The child that you were has gone, but you've gone on. The person you were yesterday has gone, but your spirit is still here. And death is exactly the same. I believe that when you die, it's just another shedding of a material form, and then you become pure spirit and continue that evolution. If you can try and think of yourselves after this talk as an eternal being, through every age and stage of your life, you are the constant. Your outward form has changed and you've learned a lot more, but that you, that essence of you, is still there. Because I'd like you to think about now, when your time comes to pass and go to heaven, what you will go to heaven? Child, teenager. We all like to think of our self in heaven as all young and healthy, but what you will go to heaven? And it's the you that's separate from all this materialism, which no longer works in this day and age. I can tell you, the number of, because of the work I do, I've met celebrities now, I've met really wealthy people having exciting lives, I've talked to people who've had suicide attempts, and often they're the most successful people. And the reason is they haven't got that spiritual meaning. That's what's missing. That's what I believe is the root of all addiction as well. People who are suffering from alcohol abuse or all sorts of addictions, they're lacking spiritual meaning. And that's why what we're talking about tonight, and what Claire and I are so passionate about talking, that eternal spirit, which we tend to talk about a bit more at Christmas, is so important. Because without that life, without that, doesn't matter how many Facebook likes you have, doesn't matter how much money in the bank account, doesn't matter if you have the perfect relationship. If you're not happy and have a sense of meaning and purpose, it doesn't matter. As we've seen with some very high-profile suicides recently. What's going on there? These people have everything we think we need, and it's not enough. Why is it not enough? Because they're not paying attention to that spirit, which we first become aware of before we're born, I believe, if you believe in reincarnation, but as a child, where it's flowing and it's beautiful. It's like a rose that's flowering then, because it's spontaneous, it's living in the present, it's curious. Don't let the world knock that spirit. Just remember that is the eternal part of you which will go on, that child in spirit. And I hope you all go and watch The Wizard of Oz at Christmas, because that's for the young at heart. That is truly it. And the trouble is, we're so cynical, aren't we? We try and knock that. And people who are sensitive or cry easily or feel. We seem to be living in a world right now where feelings, we just don't want to address them. But feelings are messages from spirit. Pay attention to them, revere them, protect them. And that's why I ask you, especially when you're dealing with your inner child, take care of that child. Because the world will try and knock it down, but take care of it, put a protective bubble around it, parent that child yourself as you go through life. Be your own source of nurturing, because when you do, you find such deep spiritual meaning, and that's what the spirit, Christmas spirit, is all about, that eternal part of you. We could just focus on that more than the present buying and the cakes, although that's very nice too, but if we could focus on that, that's what we would try. And that's what Claire brings into her readings and her work. She reconnects people with their eternal self. And that's what I've always said. I don't really mind that whether Claire brings proof of survival or not. It's more what she stands for and what she represents. Someone who's devoted their lives to helping people reconnect with the eternal part of themselves.
That's beautiful, thank you. So as we go into the future then, and in the eternal now, what is it the dead are dying to teach us? That's the name of my book that I'm writing. Little plug there. But the reason is, and I'm so grateful and blessed that Watkins, this beautiful shop and publishers, are going to be running this book with me next year. What is it they want to tell us? What is it? Why do they come back to us to let us know? What do they want us to know? Why do they make that effort? Well, there are many, many things they want to put right, or they want to draw our attention to. And as Theresa quite rightly says, when we lose touch with our eternal self and we lose touch of our spiritual inner being, then often we make decisions in life that come from the wrong place. They're not coming from the heart, they're coming from the head. I do believe that many of us have difficulty believing in an afterlife because we don't want to be a fool. We have lost touch with the inner child. We are overanalyzing, overthinking, and there's nothing wrong with thinking. That's an important thing to do. But sometimes in our cynicism or our feelings that we might actually have made a mistake or worry it's too good to be true because life gets very difficult, we worry or we turn our attention away from that aspect. So in spirit, they come back to remind us you're an eternal being. They also, in the spirit of Christmas again, I find it interesting that they don't care about the types of evidence that a medium's trying to get. They have a completely different agenda from what you or I want to get out of a reading. We're looking for the proof because we need to get in touch with that joy in us again, that there's something more, something bigger. They're trying to come back to say, listen, What's important? I want to tell you I love you. I should have said that. I should have said it. I didn't get a chance, or I should have said it more. I want to tell you, be giving, make time, do something for someone else that makes you happy and brings you joy, be in service. All the things that we think of and do at Christmas, when we suddenly have a little guilt trip perhaps, and realise that remember that there are homeless people, or people that are lonely, or people that are grieving, they come back to try and remind us of this. We're well, you will survive, and it isn't about your material gain, because you're going to have to leave that behind. So before we have to move into the spirit world ourselves and look back and realise I should have done things a little bit differently, or I could have done other things or more, Theresa and I are trying to put you in with that spirit that the spirit world bring back to encourage you. Be joyful, be happy, be childlike, be caring. You know, do the things that you know in you are what life is about. It is about the beingness. It's not about what you have or the level of achievement that you've achieved in your works. We can take the pressure off ourselves. It's quite nice, you know. So let's learn from them so that in your 2019 and going forward, you're making a choice from your passion and not from duty.
As I said, the theme of this talk has been we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience. And at Christmas, that's the time when there's all this talk about the spirit, but nobody quite knows what that is. It's not about the birth of Christ, it's not about religion, it's about feelings, heart, generosity, and that eternal you I've been trying to reference from the inner, right from the child to where you are now, to the you that you will be in the future, and the you that we will be in spirit. And that's the you that's going to be around for eternity. Yes, people, it is eternity. So we are here for a reason. I don't know what. I often compare it to the underside of a tapestry, all knots and messy ends, and then in spirit that tapestry's turned over and you see the bigger picture and it all makes sense. We will understand at some point, but maybe even in spirit we have to keep on learning and evolving. And I do know from the thousands of letters I've had from people who write to me about afterlife signs, near-death experiences, angel encounters that they have, that the dead, as Claire's book will talk about, are trying to reach us all the time through subtle, through hidden messages, through every feeling we have in our heart. Start paying attention to it, start tuning into it. Start also thinking about your future. There's nothing wrong with that. I know there's a lot of focus on the present right now, but make friends with your future self, because that future self is already there in spirit. We call it the sort of long body over time. In spirit, our spirit already knows it's already all there in some loop, some eternity. Make friends, have a handshake with your higher self, which I believe is your future self, your past self, your present self, but that eternal part of you. And to continue the theme of learning, which I think is so important for people who are on a spiritual path or a psychic development path, next year I believe Watkins is going to be doing some courses online, which will be available to download. Claire will be doing Psychic Powers, which will be amazing, because she's such a good teacher. I'll be doing something about rituals and living in the present moment, maybe even spells and everything, and a lot of other amazing authors will be doing it. And the reason I'm saying that is because it'll help you learn, also help you meet other people, because there will be a forum for people to meet and talk online, because that's where a lot of life is happening right now. There's strength in numbers. And would it be wonderful if this takes off, and that Watkins, this shop, which I have always been in love with, which is an amazing place, the oldest esoteric bookshop in the world, one day becomes a centre for this spiritual renaissance, renewal, recovery. Because so many people are learning what really matters in life, not all the other stuff. Let's move towards a world where spiritual development is first on our list of priorities, taught at school maybe even, and not last way down the bottom. Because without that, life really, truly has no meaning. And I have had the privilege, I'll just close at this point, of sitting with people, as I worked in a hospice for a while, who have passed. And I promise you, they never ever talk about material things. two things came across with me. One was obviously feelings of love, and the other was regret. They never regret what they've done. So even if you've messed up horribly this year, it's been a terrible year, everything's gone wrong, you won't regret that when your time comes. But you will regret things you haven't done. So let that, take that away with you. No regrets. Life is a wonderful, magical gift from Spirit to us to help us learn and grow. We can learn things in our material form that we can't learn in our spiritual form. And that's why we're here.
Thank you.